This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
The Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Lamed Hey, Lamed Aleph, tells us that when a person comes to the basin Shel Mala, one of the very first questions amongst the first four questions is if it was Kovei Itim LeTorah, if he set aside specific times for learning Torah. So often when it comes to this Shaila, people often think, the Kollel guys think it's not for me, it's the guys working, and the working guys think, alright, it's for the guys maybe in Kollel, and each one thinks it's not Negeah to me. And tonight, Beis Hashem, and just in a very small, short, easy way, we'll try, Beis Hashem, just to go through a small amount of the Inyanim, just to see where this comes from, to see some of the Shittas HaPoskim, and to see, Beis Hashem, how it's Negeah to us in certain times of Limud Torah, whether it be listening to shiurim, whether it be to shiurim in person, shiurim on the video, on the tapes, on the MP3s, on these sorts of things. What halacha does that have? Now we know that Limud Torah is the highest form. Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, the Gemara tells us. It's the highest madrega that a person can get. It's the highest and most unbelievable schar that a person can ever get. The Mishnah and Peah that we say every single morning, Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, the Gemara in Megillah, that Talmud Torah is Yosem at Solas Nefashos. As we see that we're dealing with something very, very big, something very, very choshev that we don't find everywhere else. Now the makor, the source for Kavei Itim LeTorah, for a person setting aside specific times for Torah, comes from a Posek in Yeshua, Perek Aleph, La Yomush Sefer Torah Azeh Mepicha, Ve'igisa Bo Yoimon V'Loila. Laman Tishmo La'asot K'Chalakos Boy, Ki Oz Tatzliach Es Darkecho. It's very clear from the Posek over there in Yeshua that we're dealing with a situation that a person is never allowed Torah to stop from himself, for his future generations. That's the makar. From here, the Rambam in Hilchos Talmud Torah and Perek Aleph, the Rambam writes that every single Yid in Klal Yisrael, whether he's poor, whether he's rich, whether he's clever or he's not clever, whether he's old or he's young, if he's Bal Yisurim, he's not Bal Yisurim, he's sick, he's well, whatever the situation, says the Rambam, every single Yid in Klal Yisrael has a Chiyuv Gomor of Yigisa B'Yoyim V'Loila of Torah. Every single person without exception. Every single man. The Kesef Mishnah brings down, again, there's a ghazals all over the Gemaras, all over Shas. Kesef Mishnah tells us so many examples of times that we find the Tanoim and the Amoraim that were so oisik in Parnasa, or they were so oisik in their health, they had problems with this and problems with that, the Apal P came. They managed to have the time to learn, they managed to have the Menuchas HaNefesh to sit and learn, and at Memaisa, says the Rambam, every person is chayiv, there's no person that's exempt from this. What's the reason? What are we learning Torah for anyway? So the Chinuch, in Parshas V'Eschana, Mitzvah Tov Yutes, the Chinuch writes as follows, and I'm going to quote you the Lashon of the Chinuch. He says, Ki limud, when a person learns Torah, says the Chinuch, Yoda ha'odom darkei Hashem yisbarach. A person learns, Kaviyochel, if it would shayach, the mahalach of the Rabbeinu Shalom. V'zulasai lo yovin, without that it's impossible for a person to understand the nechshav kebehema. As I state in Chinuch. Now, of course, we know the difference between a behema and a human being is Odom as the koyach hadibor, Odom as a koyach for a person to speak. Speech is something that Odom was given, whereas a behema wasn't given that. But it goes higher than that. And the highest madrega that we can reach is Limud Torah, says the Chinuch. And if a person doesn't have that, he's nechshav to a behema. So there's a very interesting Kav Halacha. The Kav Halacha in Orach Chaim Simon Kuf Nun Hey brings as follows. Sikot Yud Gimel. He brings a chidah. That the chidah says, what is the mile of Kavei Itim LeTorah? What do you need it for, this mile? Just say learn. Everybody should just learn. What's this business of being Kavei Itim, that every single day a Yid has to make sure that he sets aside a specific portion of time for Limud Torah? What do you need it for? So he brings over there a beautiful thought. He says in Sechidah, what is the miler of the Kviyas of Kviyas HaTorah? So he brings a Gemara, famous Gemara in Yuma Daf Peidalad Amud Beis. The Gemara also, everyone knows, from the end of the first parak in Ksubas as well. We know it from Yehudeas and Kuf Yud Aleph. Kol Keveya Kemerza Merza Domi. When something is kavua, when something is set, it's Kemerza al Merza Domi. Says the Chidah, wonderful thing, that if a person sets aside time to learn, a person puts portions up of his day, of his night, this is my time of limud HaTorah. So even if it's a small amount, but because he was Kaveya, because he has a specific time, says the Chidah, quoted in the Kav Halacha Beis Hora'ah, it's as if he learned half a day and half a night. Kol kavur k'mertza mertzadami. Wonderful thought. Sometimes we don't always have the opportunity to learn a whole day, or at least most of the day. But here it says, the Chidah, that a person has the opportunity to be koveya, and when it's koveya, automatically it is koveya, is k'mertza mertzadami. Now the Lashon of the Shulchan Aruch over here in Chaim Simon Kufnon Hey, when he talks about what happens when a person is supposed to be going from the Beis HaKnesses, from Shul, and he's supposed to be going maybe eventually off to work, what should he do in the meantime? So the Shulchan Aruch's Lashon is V'tzorich she'oisa eis yeh kavua shelo yavirenu. Very important. Kavua doesn't mean every day. People have this idea it has to be every day. Of course it has to be every day. But it says the Shulchan Aruch, Psak LaHalacha, it has to be a time of the day that is also set. There has to be a time of the day, and we'll see Beis Hashem as to people sitting and learning all day as well. But there has to be a time in the day that this is my time of limud HaTorah. And this is what makes it kavua more than anything else. In fact, the Svarim HaKadoshim bring a moshel that's compared to the korban tamid in the Beis HaMikdash. The korban tamid we know is offered twice a day, every single day. Every single day of the year, morning and afternoon, is the korban tamid. Why is it called a korban tamid? Continuous. Maybe a continuous or constant would be another word. What's the reason for that? Because it's always going to be there. It's always going to happen. And exactly at the same time. It's the same thing with Kaveya Tim Torah. A person has to be Kaveya every single day at the specific time. And this Rabbi says, not Musa Sfarim. This is not, this is halachic in Shulchan Aruch, like every other halacha we learn in Shulchan Aruch. This is exactly the same. The Shulchan Aruch is paskening, it has to be kavua of the time. Now it's interesting, just as a side note, the ghazal, the Mishnah, that we all say, to Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, it's the highest madrega, the Vilna Gaon. When a person learns a word of Torah, he gets all the mitzvahs together, every single word that he utters. So there is a Balatanya in Igeres HaKodesh, Daf Kuf Yudalad. So he brings over there a very interesting thing. He says that this Maimon Chazal, this Mishnah that says Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, was talking Bizman Chazal. Was talking by the Zman of the Tanoim and the Amoyoim, the people that were called Kuloi Shakua B'Torah Kedosha. It's not talking about us. Says the Balatanya, Be'ikvesa the Mashiach, in our generation, the Ikka is Maiset Staka, because we don't have the same madrega of Torah that they had. But Al Koponim, we have Chazal, Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, the Vilna Gaon, every single word, famous from Chaim Volozhin in Nefesh HaChaim, where he writes that if a world would be 1 moment, 1 second, void of a word of Torah, if there would be the entire world, there would not be one murmur of Torah, a word of Torah, the entire world wouldn't exist, and the world would go back to Torah Vavo. It just wouldn't exist. The creation just can't keep itself up, says the Nefesh HaChaim. Torah keeps up the entire world. Every word that we utter, we have no idea when we utter a word of Torah that we could actually, at that moment of time, be uplifting and keeping up the creation at that moment of time, because nobody else right now is learning. Famous Chassam Sofer, by Purim, where you have 2 days, right? You Dalet and Tesvav, because you need people to learn the whole time. Famous Chassam Sofer, Ayin Shom. Al Koponim, there's also a Gemara in Chagiga that everybody knows. The Gemara says that the Rebbeinu Shalom, Kaviyachol, cries. Even though the Gemara Chazal tell us that it's not shy for the Rebbeinu Shalom to cry, but Chazal tell us in the Gemara in Chagiga that the Rebbeinu Shalom cries every single day for a person that could learn but doesn't learn. So here we're in a situation where we're bringing Kaviyachol, the Rebbeinu Shalom, to tears on a daily basis for someone that can learn and he doesn't learn. So we see the chashivas of what we're dealing with over here. Rav Chaim Zatzal, I remember, Rav Chaim Zatzal used to always say, when people used to come to him, that the wife was having a baby, and the shaila often was that they should get inducing. Right? If they should bring the baby out quicker. Right? The Chvais is getting late, the doctor has to go, for whatever reason it may be. So Shaimek Zatzal was of the opinion you should never do such a thing. Obviously, we're not getting involved in the medical issue. Sometimes when there's a medical issue, it needs to be, obviously a person should consult his Rov, his doctor, whatever. But he was saying when there's no medical thing, don't induce the baby. You know what the reason is? Because the baby is learning right now Chavrusa with a malach. Torah Kedosha, the highest form of Torah, Gato Motzasa, the Momegoyin Motzasa. What do you mean? You found it. You found it means it was there already because you learned it in the mother's stomach. So Kaponi was very makpit. We're dealing with Torah. You mafsik the baby with the Chavrusa of the Malach. Why can you do such a thing? He understood what it means to learn Torah. He understood what it meant. A word of Torah. In fact, there was a famous mitzvah of Scheinberg that his uncle, brother-in-law, one of the relations of the Mishpacha, once came to him and said they're having an operation, whatever it was. And they asked Rav Scheinberg Rav Scheinberg was having something, whatever it was some medical treatment, and he asked his brother-in-law, his uncle, to try and learn for him. Should we have a schus of Torah while he won't be able to learning himself because he'll be under the anesthetic of the operation? And he did. So he thanked him after, thank you very much. I wasn't able, obviously my mind wasn't with it, I wasn't able to learn as I should have done, but thank you for learning for me. A couple of years later, his uncle came to him, or the same cousin, the same relation, whatever it was, who did this favor for him years back, said to him, all right, I've got a favor to ask you now. For whatever reason, I'm not going to be able to learn for this amount of time. If you can please learn for me, give away some of your Torah time and learn for me. And Rav Scheinberg Pasha couldn't do it. Pasha couldn't do it. He understood what it means, one word of Torah. I mean, we think, what's the big deal? So we'll say a few Mishnayos to somebody. Chas v'shalom, I'm not saying about it we should. But he was giving away his Torah. He said, if you give me $1 million, $5 million, I wouldn't do the same thing for one word of Torah. It meant so much to him. He understood what it meant. Upon him, that's what we're dealing with Torah. Now the chiyuv to learn. How much is the chiyuv for us to learn? Number one, where does it come from? And number two, how much do we have to learn every single day? What is the amount, what's the share of Talmud Torah that we are chayiv to Mekayim on a daily basis? So this Posek in the Yeshua, Parak Aleph, Posek Ches, La Yomush, Sefer Torah, Mipicha, V'gisa b'yoyim v'loyla. So Lemais Zazoy comes out from here. Tosfos tells us in Brachos, Yud Aleph on the base, V'chol Shah, says Tosfos, Chayiv Odom Lilmoid Shenema V'gisa b'yoyim v'loyla. Tosfos in Brachos learns as a Dova Poshet. From this pasuk, a person is mechuyev to learn every single moment of spare moment of the day. Of course, if he's being oisik in parnasa, if he's being oisik in other things, he has to do other things. He has to eat, a person has to sleep, a person has to be oisik in parnasa sometimes. But any spare moment that you have, it's not just once and once, not once in the morning, once at night. It says Tosfos, it has to be kol shah. It's not only Tosfos, it's also the Vilna Gaon passes this way, the Ran in the Doran Daf Ches, the Ritzvah also in the Doran Daf Ches passing this way, and the Mishnah Berurah over here in Simon Kufran Heisik Cotton Dollar Psak La Halacha Lemaisa. The Mishnah Berurah passes v'chol shah, like Tosfos. It has to be every moment. There's no such thing as the Yisa b'yoyim v'loyla means do a Mishnah in the morning, a Mishnah at night, Yaitza. No, about that could be in a b'di'evet situation. But lechatchila Tosfos and the Mishnah Berurah is passing La Halacha. It has to be every single time. And the Chavetz Chaim, in fact, is medayik from the Lashon Lo Yomush. Lo Yomush means it should never leave a person. And in fact, the Chavetz Chaim goes on to explain that even if a person knows Kol HaTorah Kula, he knows everything. He knows how to Mekayim every single mitzvah. He knows every single page in Shas, every page in Shulchan Aruch, every medrash. He knows everything. But says the Chavetz Chaim, because the Posek says Lo Yomush, it means a person should never stop. It has to be a constant thing. And the Shulchan Aruch Harav also in Perek Beis, in Hilchos Talmud Torah, in the Chelik in Yeridea, in the Kuntrus Achon Sikot Aleph in the beginning. So he writes over there in Shulchan Aruch Harav that a person has a chiyuv, that even if he knows everything already, in other words, they're learning that the chiyuv of Talmud Torah is not just in order to know what to do. Even though the Gemara in Kedushin tells us, famously, Daf Mem Amud Beis, Talmud Meivili De Maisa, that of course our ikar tachlis of why we're learning is in order to perform the mitzvahs, in order to serve the Rebbeinu Shalom. But says the Shulchan Aruch Harav, that's not Pshat in Talmud Torah. Pshat in Talmud Torah is to learn, even if you know everything already. Even if it's all known to you. There's a continuous chiyuv of Talmud Torah every single moment of the day and of the night. However, from Kama Rishonim, they have a different mahalach. Other Rishonim want to learn that the mashmois over here of the chiyuv of learning is not a mitzvah b'fnei atzmai, like the other Rishonim are learning, that there's a mitzvah of Talmud Torah. They're learning, the other Rishonim are learning, that it's a prat in the mitzvah of how to know the mitzvahs. In other words, they're learning Talmud Torah is a chiyuv on us to know what to do. And therefore, according to that, it's a slightly different mahalach. They learn it from the Posek, Vishinamto levanecha. Therefore, if you weren't taught from your father, then you weren't taught it to your son, you weren't taught it yourself, you have a chiyuv on your own to do it. The chinuch goes with this mahalach. In mitzvah tov yates. Upon him, there's an interesting Rambam as well. The Rambam says that the ikar chiyuv of Torah is in order not to forget. In fact, the lashon of the Rambam is ad eimosei chayiv lilmoid. Until when is a person chayiv to learn? Says the Rambam, ad yoim moisei. Until a person dies. There's no end. There's no amount that a person is finished at that point over there. Now let's continue. The Office Reb Nosson tells us like this. The Office Reb Nosson says, Rabbi Lapian Zatzal always used to quote this Office Reb Nosson, that if a person makes the Torah in his life toffel, and he makes other things the ikar, then in Shamayim, says the Office Reb Nosson, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to make the Torah that you learned also the toffel, and the Mela you'll also become toffel in that way. The Posek in Vayikra Perik Yudches, Posek Dalas, said that Eschukoisai Tishmoiru Lolechas Bohem Ani Hashem. Rashi explains, what does it mean Lolechas Bohem? Rashi says you're never potter from Torah. The Korban Aaron explains Pshat. It says over there in the Posek, it says walk in them, Lolechas, to walk. It doesn't say to do. Why? Because a person has to realize he's always on the road. He's always on the way. There's no end. There's a constant chiyuv at all times. Now I have to continue and I have to mention the famous chiddush of the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan has a tremendous chiddush. It's in Yeridea. The Aruch HaShulchan wants to taina. It's true. The Pashat Pshat of Yigisa B'Yoyim V'Layla is all day and all night when possible. Obviously excluding sleeping and obviously excluding eating and parnas and everything else. But it really is all day and all night. However, says the Aruch HaShulchan, it's efsha for most people, except Yechidim Shebadar. Says the Aruch HaShulchan, the chiyuv of V'Yisa B'Yoyim V'Layla, which is at all times during the day and all times during the night, is a chiyuv in every person. But it's efsha for most people, except for Yechidim Adar. And therefore, Lamaisa, there are those that want to taina. There is actually a Radvaz that wants to taina that the chiyuv is not really all the time. But upon him, as we said before, Rov Rishonim don't hold this way. Now, what happens if a person taka cant? What happens if a person cannot learn the entire day and the entire night? What are you going to do? What happens if a person's busy? He's making a parnasa, he's got a chasana, he's busy doing this, he's busy doing that. It's not shy to sit and learn the whole time. What's he meant to do? So the Shulchan Aruch says, what happens if you cannot fulfill your chiyuv, you can't fulfill your obligation? So the Ramah brings Agois Maimon. The Ramah brings this sheet that holds B'shas Hadchak, that as long as you read Kriya Shema in the morning and Kriya Shema at night, so bidi eved your yoytza your chiv of the Yigisa B'Yoyim V'Layla. Bidi eved B'shas Hadchak. The Aruch HaShulchan explains that we're talking about a mikra ba'alma. We're not talking about something that always happens. We're talking about something that, some crazy situation. He's got a chasna and he's mamash oisik in the business, in the preparations, and he's busy from the morning, from night, all the way till, he's mamash busy. So it says the Aruch HaShulchan, in such a case, so then you could be yotza with Kriya Shema in the morning and Kriya Shema at night. You don't have to learn more than that. Obviously, if you can and you have the time, you should, but you don't have to. In fact, somebody told me, he told me this morning, that the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva Zatzal was his website today, that the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva used to tell people, especially this is negayah to people in England, right, maybe other places in the world also, but in England where sometimes nacht, where you daven Ma'ariv, sometimes 10, 11 o'clock at night, make sure you learn something after Ma'ariv. It's very negayah. You daven Ma'ariv often 11 o'clock at night, you go straight to bed, but you didn't learn. You have a chiyuv Yigisa B'Yoyim V'Layla. Of course, if it's yevsha, it's yevsha. But if a person should try very much to be chayim his chiyuv in that way. Now, I want to move on. There's a very interesting shaila as follows. There's a biscuit tshuva. The biscuit tshuva in Yeridea Siman Reish Mem Vav. Right in the beginning, the biscuit tshuva brings a Mishnas Chachamim, where the Mishnas Chachamim has the following shaila. What happens if a person has a shei kavua? Every single day he learns a blat. He learns Daf Yomi. He learns Mishnah Yomi. He learns Chayis Omid Yomi of Mishnah Bura. all the wonderful things. Every day, that's what he does. Daf Yomi, Mishnah Yomi, Mishnah Berurah Yomi, whatever. Rambam Yomi, everything. So what's the halacha if one day he doesn't manage? One day he's Isaac in his business, he's Isaac in something else, he doesn't get to the shir, he doesn't get to do Daf Yomi, he doesn't manage to fulfill his quota for the day. So the biscuit Tshuva brings from the Mishnah's Chachamim over there, do you have a chiyuv to learn extra the next day in order to be mashlim your neder? Or is it like a neder liyoim zeh, which like a korban, if you bottle the yoim, so it's bottle the korban, and therefore I missed today? No, what am I meant to do? So if I miss my sheh, I miss my daf, I miss my seder and Mishnah Berurah, like, for example, let's maybe daf yomi is not such a good idea, because most people will always do it up the next day. Let's say, for example, he's doing omid yomi in Mishnah Berurah himself. So big deal, so if I didn't do it today, no, so I'll do it tomorrow. So there's a shaila if you have a chiyuv al pi neder the next day to learn extra for what you missed yesterday. Lemaisa is machme, the Pesach Tshuva in your day is machme, and says yes, you have a chiyuv, you should be machme to be mashlim your neder on the next day. That's what he says. Now what happens in the next shaila? Pesach Tshuva brings sikotten base. Another shaila. He says what happens if a person is paid to teach Torah? Right? Or the Sfarim Bizman Hazeh say, if a person is paid to sit in koilo. Right? He has a koilo, morning, afternoon, night, and he sits Baruch Hashem, and he learns the whole time. He has a chiyuv to learn Torah. Shkoyach. He has a chiyuv, right? He sits, he gets paid by the koilo. What's the halacha in such a case? Is that considered to be kaveh itim l'Torah? Or no? He's paid to learn. He's doing it as a job. He's a rebbe in a cheder, or he sits in a koilo, or he teaches, talmidim in a yeshiva gemara. He's paid to do so. And if, for example, by night, right, he goes to a night shir, he gives a shir, he comes home. Does he have a chiyuv to learn now? Because kavetim l'Torah. He never learned. What do you mean he learned? He gave a shir. He gave a shir to 500 talmidim. Of course he learned. No, because it's not called kavetim l'Torah. That's the shaman in the Pesach Tshuva. So the chidah is machme. The chidah tainis is a sofik doraisa l'chumra. The Kav Halacha Beis this way, Chaim said kufrun heis cotton dalet sofik doraisa l'chumra, and therefore according to Kav Halacha, that if a person learns and he learns in a way that he's paid to learn, whether it be in koilo, whether it be in a cheder, whether it be in a school, but his learning is done in a paid form, so he's not yotzav yigisim boyom v'loy over there. Of course, he's yotzav Talmud Torah, but his chiyuv of learning on a daily basis, morning and night, wasn't yotzav, and therefore again, shouldn't say it wasn't yotzav, but sofik doraisa l'chumra, and therefore we should vaday make it up over there. Next shaila, listening to a shir, person, people, Baruch Hashem, Klal Yisrael is growing, the opportunities are growing, right? People can listen to shiurim wherever they are in the world, whether it be Daf Yomi, Chumash shiurim, Musa shiurim, whether it be on the MP3, whether it be on computers. There's Baruch Hashem, there's Spashit, a gewaldige Talmud Torah in the ganze Welt. The shaila is Torah anytime. Baruch Hashem, Amish, Klal Yisrael, thousands and thousands of people listening to shiurim all over the world. So the shaila is, if I listen to a shir, everybody sitting here, are you yotze Talmud Torah? You better hope so, right? Otherwise everyone's going to get up and leave. Are you yotze Talmud Torah right now or not? So we'll start with the first shaila. When a person opens up a sefer, he doesn't read, right? He wants to relax. So how do you relax? I assume you open up a sefer, you see what's going on, you read the sefer a little bit. It's geschmack, right? Are you yotze Talmud Torah if I'm reading a sefer? Behira, I'm not saying anything. What's the halacha? So there's a very famous Shulchan Aruch Rav in Hilchos Talmud Torah Perek Beis Sikotten Yud Beis, that the Shulchan Aruch Rav writes that you're only yotze the chiyuv of v'limadatem oisam, of learning Torah, when a person says the words, he speaks out the words, because where does he get that from? The Posek. The Posek says lo yomush haTorah hazeh mipicha, from your mouth. Says the Shulchan Aruch Rav, if you don't say the words mipicha, you're not yotze the mitzvah. You're not yotze. You're not making the mitzvah of Talmud Torah unless, he says, you're being ma'ayin in it. If you're mamish thinking about it, you're mamish in it, then you're yotze, even if you're doing it only behira. But start reading a sefer, says the Shulchan Aruch Rav, you're not yotze mitzvah Talmud Torah over there. The Nishmas Adam in Klal Tes, Sikotten Dalet, also says, Only if the Torah is moitzi mipiyah. If it comes out of your mouth, then you're mekayim the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, because every other mitzvah is totally in dibur, in peh, you have to come out. We know by benching, we know by sometimes by Kriya Shema. It has to be said. The same thing over here has to be said. Pnei Yeshua also in Brachos has Rov and Posek, Paskas this way. There's a Maharsham. The Maharsham in Chei Beisim Lamed Ches says also that if a person learns quietly, he's not yotza his choivas of limud, because it's only behira ba'alma. Now, what happens if a person cannot say something b'peh? He can't. He can't speak properly, he's sick, he can't make a noise, whatever it might be. He cannot right now, it's efsha, for him to be moitzi the words mipiv. So there's a Maharshah, very interesting Maharshah, in Shabbos, Daf Samach Zayin Omid Aleph, where the Maharshah brings the Gemara. The Gemara says, Chash b'roishoy yasik b'toyah. Person has a headache, what do? So people think, what do you mean? Go to bed, right? No, says the Gemara, yasik b'toyah. Right? It doesn't say anywhere that's going to get healed, by the way. Agav. People that have this magical formula that if I got a headache, learn. No, why is it not going away? I don't know. It doesn't say the Gemara is going to go away. It's just like what you should do when you have a headache. But that's besides the point. So the Maharshah learns from there that we're talking, it doesn't say Yasik b'divrei Torah, says the Maharshah. It says Yasik b'Torah. Why? Because the person can't speak. He's got a bad headache. He can't speak. He can't say it loud. And therefore says the Maharshah that when it's impossible, when it's efsha for a person to say the words, then you yotza Talmud Torah, because it's not possible to say it in that case. That's the Maharshah. Now I must tell you that halacha l'maisa, most poskim are mekel. Most poskim hold that I feel if you didn't say the words, but you read in the sefer, you're yotza 100% Talmud Torah. There's a Rabbeinu Yoina in Ovos Perek Gimel Mishnah Beis. There's a Ritva in Brachos Tezvav Amud Beis. Mr. Shakisarian, Semen Chav Dalet, Mishkeles Yaakov, Semen Samach Dalet, Yeshuas Yaakov, Semen Mem Zayin, Menachas Chinuch, Mitzvah Tov Lamed, Reb Shlomo Zalman passing this way, Rav Avadia, in Yabia Oimech Chenek Dalet, Semen Ches passing this way. Lemaisa Roi Poskim hold that when a person learns, even if he doesn't say it, he's yotza the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. In fact, there's an interesting Makar Chaim from the Chavos Yah. You know, Chaim Simon Pehei, he brings a Gewaldige Raya. He says, Ro'isi be'enai. All the Gedolim of our generation, says the Makor Chaim. How did they learn? You think they all said it? No. They read the Sefer, they were ma'ayin in the Sefer, and they learned that way. And that was Talmud Torah. And therefore says the Makor Chaim, and Azoi Paskim, the Maisa, Reb Shlomo Zalman, Rav Avadia, and Roiv Gedolei Poskim, Rishonim included, is a person is yotza the mitzvah, even without saying the words. But of course, we all know the Gemara in Erev and Daf Nun Dalet, where the Gemara tells us, if a person wants to remember his learning, then you've got to say it loud. That's the way to remember your learning. Now that's talking about Behiro. That's talking about opening up a sefer and reading a Yotze Talmud Torah. The shaila is, what about listening to a shir? What about listening to a shir? Is that the same thing? Sitting in a shir, is it the same thing as sitting and opening a sefer and learning it with my mind, or is it different? So it's interesting, the Shulchan Aruch Harav in Perek Beis, in Hilchos Talmud Torah, Sekot Yud Beis, when he talks about this, he tells us, Pashtus, Shemer Ka'ina. When a person listens to a person saying Torah, Shemer Ka'ina tells me it's as if I'm saying it. So when you're listening to a shir right now, it's as if you are saying the shir, it's as if you're getting the words of Torah coming out of your mouth, and you're yotza Talmud Torah according to everybody. In fact, let me give you the words of the Mishnah Berurah brings in Simon Kufan and Hein or Chaim. He brings a medrash. The medrash says as follows: Omer Reb Yeshua, Omer Reb Nachman, Kol mi sheba lebeis hamedrash v'shama divrei Torah zoichel yeshe ben hachachomim la'asid lavai. So it means from here, the Mishnah Berurah also going with this mahalach, that when a person learns and he sits in the shir, he's yotza the mitzvah of Talmud Torah without any shaila whatsoever. What about listening to a tape? What about listening to a CD? So the Maisa as follows: there's a tshuva in the Vayvorech David in Simon Kufay and Zayin. He wants to be machalik as follows. He wants to say that when a person listens to a shir, mipi, the mouth of the person giving the shir, then he's yaitza. But if you're listening to a tape, to a pre-recording, or to a tape, even if it's live, but it comes from, the electricity and everything else, without going into the shaila, what electricity is, and can you make Havdalah on the phone, and these sorts of shailas, because Lamaisa, he wants the taina, that when you're listening it on a tape, There's no mile of shmiya. It's like hiru, and therefore it's not the same madrega of sitting in the share. So number one, again, yesh cholkim olav. There are those that argue, but he wants to taina that it's a big mile for a person to go to the share rather than listen to the share. However, whichever way you learn, no one's going to argue. That when I once heard this from Rabbi Avi, when somebody asked him the shaila, there's no doubt that if a person can learn while he's traveling, a person can learn while he's going, whether it be on the street, whether it be in the car, whether it be on the train, right? Baruch Hashem, I have people telling me that they're listening to my shiurim on the train, in the car, in Manhattan, in the offices over there, Williamsburg, Baruch Hashem, but this is no doubt about it. There's a chiyuv and there's a mitzvah of limud Torah to different dargas according to different people. Just to finish off with two last things, there's a very interesting Dubna Magid. The Dubna Magid says that in the days where bows and arrows were the ways of war and every milchama, so there was a certain yid, there was a certain person that walked into these weird small villages in the middle of nowhere, and he sees an interesting sight. He sees a whole bunch of these bullseyes, these round circles, and the arrow is exactly every single time in the middle, without a fail. Every time the arrow is exactly on the bullseye, 100%. And he thinks to himself, wow, we have a guy in this village over here that really knows how to fight. He knows how to use a bow and arrow. He should be in the top of the army. What's he doing here in this village? So he goes and inquires who's the person, and they direct him to the right person. They say, he's the guy. So they go over to him and they say, tell me, what's your secret? How do you do this? Every time a bullseye, it's unbelievable. I said, I'll tell you, very simple. Very simple. He said, first I shoot the arrow, it goes on, and then I draw the aim around it. Says the Dubna Magid, the Gavaldige Gezach. We realize sometimes what shaman wants from us. We know what we're meant to be doing. We know our chiyuvim. We know our obligations. But sometimes we get sidetracked. So what we need to do is we need to plant our obligation in the right place. We need to know from where we're meant to start, our starting point, and then work around it. When a person has his day set up, whether you're learning all day or whether you're learning part of the day, makes absolutely no difference. You set up your day koydem kol with limud Torah and work around that. And that is the success, and that's the hatzlocha for a gavaldige life. One last gavaldige maisa, famous maisa, shopkeeper who was very makbid on kadei itim la Torah. His share was kodesh hakadoshim to him. And all of a sudden walked in the afternoon a very wealthy looking person into his store with a big wad of cash, and he was looking and he was taking this off the shelf and this off the shelf, and he was thinking, wow, how much money we're making today, it's an unbelievable thing. Eventually the time of his share arrives. He says to the fellow, can you please be quickly, my share's starting, I don't know, I haven't decided yet, I need this, I need this. He said, listen, I need to go to my share, I need to go to my Torah is more chosh than anything else. Take the keys of the shop. Whenever you're finished, lock up, and give me the key, and we're in the Beis Medrash down the road. So, okay, that's what he did. He left it there. He went to the Beis Medrash, and this person eventually followed him and said, I want to tell you something. I'm from the tax company. I've come to see whether you're an honest person, or you're making sort of, somewhere along the lines, a bit of trickery. If a person is so makbid, if a person is so careful with his time, with his religious life, with his Torah, with everything, so he's obviously a trustworthy person. When a person knows his goals, when a person sets his goals, then Be'ez Hashem will have nachas from us, and our Torah will be a gavaldige maila, and we will take be zoicha to all of the brachas that ghazal tell us a person can get when he learns Torah, when he's oisik in Torah, and he makes Torah the ikar of his day. Shkoyach HaBeis.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.